Hi everyone, today I want to talk about fear and anxiety. Now, this video is focused on helping you to understand them a little bit better. Now, I'll make a separate video that's going to help you to deal with it, but learning more about it and understanding it better is a crucial part in learning how to deal with it, so this is just as important. Now, I want to start off by pointing out the difference between fear and anxiety. They both create a very similar response within us, but there's a key difference. Fear is generated by an immediate threat in our external environment, something that threatens our survival and our safety. For example, a lion is running towards you. That will generate fear within you. Anxiety, on the other hand, is generated internally, usually by our thoughts, and it's usually around the unknown. So for example, you have to give a presentation in a week's time, and you start thinking about everything can go wrong. Now you experience anxiety. You don't know how the people are going to respond. Are you going to remember what you're supposed to do? All of those worries give you anxiety. So it's more non-physical, put it that way. Now, anxiety can be triggered externally. So for example, you see an image or someone says something, and that triggers a certain memory. And now your thoughts start to run away with you and you start to worry, and that creates anxiety. Now, despite the difference between fear and anxiety, they both create the same response within us, which is the fight or flight response. And this is a response we go into whenever our survival is threatened. It's the mind and body's way of trying to help you to survive whatever you're going through. Now, I'm going to get into the fight or flight response in detail shortly because it's very important to understand. But before I do that, I need you to understand the following. If you are struggling with anxiety, I need you to understand what's really happening. Like I said, anxiety is triggered internally by our thoughts and memories. So whenever we have a thought that makes us believe that our survival is at stake or that it's the end of the world for us, then the mind and body will respond accordingly. And this could be anything. It can be failing an exam, going through a breakup, whatever it is. If we think that it's going to destroy us, the mind and body will try and protect you by putting you into the fight or flight response. You'll have the same response as if someone is physically pointing a gun to your head and you're about to get shot. There's that famous quote that says, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. And we can pull this through to this. Whether you think something is the end of the world for you or not, you're right. It will be the end of the world for you because you believe it. You see, so that's important. This is why learning to deal with your anxiety, which I'll get into in a different video, you have to learn to control and manage your thoughts and your inner dialogue. And that takes a lot of mental discipline, which is not easy, but it's doable. Now, there's one more thing I want to touch on before we move on, and I want you to think about this. Whenever you become panicked and you allow your anxiety to control you, you are actually lessening your chances of dealing with whatever you're worrying about. Think about it. When you become anxious and you get into the state of anxiety and you go into fight or flight, your mind is a mess. There's so much noise in your head. You can't think clearly. You become frantic. You become emotional. All of these things prevent you from dealing with it effectively. When you learn to control this, you become calm, level-headed, grounded, and you can actually deal with it effectively, which is going to lessen the chance of whatever you're worrying about from actually happening. I also don't want you to think of anxiety and fear as the enemy, and it has to be avoided. It's actually got its place, it's got a purpose, but in moderation. In healthy amounts, it's beneficial, but when it becomes excessive and it controls us, that's when the problems begin. Here are two examples. If you're in a leadership position and you experience healthy amounts of anxiety, it can actually help you to be a better leader. Because people who experience anxiety tend to think of everything that can go wrong, which means the chances of you making a better decision is higher. But if your anxiety is going to control you, you're going to be indecisive because of everything that can go wrong, right? You can also see this in competitive sports. A healthy amount of anxiety keeps you vigilant. It keeps you sharp. So it can be beneficial if you can control it. That's the message I want to get across here. Now, this brings me to the fight or flight response. When our survival is threatened, we become afraid. And when we're afraid, the fight or flight response kicks in. Now, this is designed to keep us safe. Now, when we're in this state, a lot of things happen physically. Number one, our muscles tighten up to ready us for action so that we can survive whatever is happening. Another thing is a lot of chemicals gets pumped into our system. Examples are adrenaline, norepinephrine, cortisol, and many other chemicals. And what they do is they create a physical response within the body. And this includes increasing your heart rate, and your blood pressure will rise up. And the reason for this is so that energy can get to the cells faster so that you can perform. This is life or death. You need to do something. Another thing that happens, our eyes widen and our pupils dilate. And the reason for that is so that we can take in more light so we can see better. Once again, survival. Sugars get released from the liver so that we can have more energy. Oxygen increases, so our breathing increases and it's more rapidly. All of these things happen as a defense mechanism. So this is a state that we go into to survive. Now what also happens is certain things get shut down. Think of a computer. You're doing stuff on the computer and it's starting to get a bit slow. So you check which applications is taking up resources that we don't need. And you start closing those applications to increase the function of the computer. Now we do the same. Our bodies, when we go into fight or flight, shuts everything down that's not appropriate for the situation. So for example, your digestive system, your body shuts it down because you don't need to digest food now. You need to run. The lion is running at you, and if you don't run, it's going to digest you, okay? So your digestive system gets shut down. Your immune system gets weakened and shut down because you don't need that. Because you're not, what's the bigger threat? Let's be honest. Getting sick or getting eaten by the lion? The lion, obviously. So immune system shuts down so that you can get that energy and channel it into something else, right? Now here's where I want to get into something that's really interesting, but I'm going to keep it relatively short. Your brain has got different parts. So you've got the low brain, which is also called your reptilian brain. And you can think of that as your instinct. Breathing, digestion, and all those kind of things get run by the reptilian brain. Then you have your midbrain, which is also called the mammalian brain. And this is basically emotion. And then you have your high brain, which is also called your neo-mammalian brain. And you can think of that as your thinking self. The part of you that reasons, thinks logically, that can observe, that can be mindful, that can have self-awareness and reflect on things. So that's the higher function of our brain. Now what's interesting is when we're in fight or flight mode, what happens is our body restricts blood flow to the high brain and pushes it to the mid and low brain. Now your body does this to protect you. Let me give you an example. If I take a ball and throw it straight at your face, you're not going to have time to think about it and try and calculate how fast is the ball coming at you. There's no time for that. There's time for moving, catching, or blocking. So you will respond so fast that you can't even think. Your hand just goes up and maybe you block the ball. That's what your body is trying to do. So when the lion is jumping at you, you don't have time to think. You've got time to act. So then what happens is when you're in fight or flight, the part of you that's emotion and instinct runs the show. And this is why people that live with a lot of fear and anxiety have trouble to access the abilities of the high brain, which includes mindfulness, self-reflection, self-awareness, the ability to see how their behaviors affect those around them or how they respond to life, the ability to step outside of their emotional experience and look at things from a logical or reasonable perspective. That's hard for them. Now, it's important to mention that the high brain is also responsible for things like self-control and willpower, and the lower parts of the brain is in charge of habits and automatic behaviors. So if you're in this state, it will be really hard for you to change because you're going to be controlled by your habits and automatic behaviors that you've picked up over the years. It's going to be hard for you. You need the power of the high brain to step outside of, you could say, your programming and to consciously choose to change. Now, what's important to understand is this response happens because your brain believes that you're in danger. And our brains can't tell the difference between really being in danger and being in danger inside our heads. So for example, think of a nightmare. You have a nightmare, you wake up, you're sweating, your heart's beating fast because you thought it was real. But it wasn't real, it was all in your head. So your brain can't tell the difference. So if you're going to entertain thoughts and let it spiral out of control and think of everything and go wrong, and you basically think yourself into fight or flight mode, your body will respond as if you're in a life-threatening situation, just based on your thoughts and what you're thinking. And this is very important. Now, why I'm sharing this with you is I'm using the example of a lion. Now, the problem with society is we have a lion that's chasing us that's non-physical. Your financial stress, relationship stress, and all these kind of things can be seen as that symbolic lion that's chasing you. Now, the fight or flight response can be seen as redlining a car. You're pushing that pedal down to the ground and you're pushing that car to give you all it's got. Now, you can't do that the whole time because the car will break down, right? Now, that's how the fight or flight response works with us. We're pushing our bodies into the red line. Now, this is designed to be temporary. You see the lion, you're redlining the body, and you get to a safe space. And once you're safe and the threat is gone, you return back to normal. That's what it's supposed to do. But now, because we have this non-physical lion, we rarely go back to normal. We're in this panic, stressed state all the time. And this constant anxiety and worry and stress is pushing you into fight or flight. So what happens is we are so used to being in the fight or flight response, we don't know what it's like to be normal. You get used to it. So when people ask you, how are you feeling? And you say fine, but your fine is not the actual fine. You just mold it around, feeling stressed and panicked all the time. You're used to it. When we experience fear, what happens is we contract. So think of like a snail or a turtle that goes into its shell. That's what we kind of do when we feel fear. We pull everything inward. And if you do that, you can't relax and have fun and live life and do other things to your fullest. You have a problem where you stay in this contracted state of readiness in case something goes wrong. And that's not a way to live. And we have to get ourselves into a state of feeling safe and secure so that we can expand and live life and relax. Now, when our basic survival needs are met and our instincts are satisfied, then what we do is we expand. And I want you to think of it like a tree that's got roots that goes deep into the ground. You settle and you create stability and you feel secure and you feel safe. That's when we speak about feeling grounded. Think of this image of the roots. Now, when we experience fear, what we do is we pull our roots out of the ground, you see? And when we do that, we become ungrounded. And when we become ungrounded, it's very easy for our thoughts to sweep us away. We think ourselves into panic attacks and all sorts of things because we're not grounded. People who are heavily rooted, if you want to put it that way, they're heavily grounded, they are more capable of dealing with things when they arise. If things go bad, they can handle it because they're grounded. Their roots run deep. Just like that saying I like that says, there's no reason to fear the wind if your roots are deep. You see? And that's what is important when it comes to grounding. Now, if your roots aren't properly developed, you may find that a basic feeling of safety and security seems to always elude you. Even when there's no physical threat, there's no threat at all. You feel anxious, you feel restless, you feel uneasy. And a lot of times you will create an issue, even if it's in your mind. You will always think of something that could go wrong, even when there's nothing that can go wrong, you'll find something. The key is to live harmoniously with our survival needs without being dominated by them. That's the key. If your survival needs and your instinct dominates you, you can't live life. You'll be stuck in your own self-created prison. Your instinct is there to protect you. But if it controls you, it becomes like an overprotective parent that doesn't want their child to play outside or to make new friends because it's unsafe. Now, when you find yourself in the state of hyper-arousal that you go into, I don't want you to think of it as there's something wrong with you. I want you to see it that your system is just very sensitive. And it's doing this to protect you. As weird as it may sound, your mind and body is trying to help you out. According to your mind, you're in danger. Your survival is at stake. So it does the only thing it can do, and that's push you into the fight or flight response. Make you hyper alert, keep you on edge, because that increases the chances of you surviving whatever is happening. A lot of times what we need to do is we need to get ourselves under control. It's your mind, your body, you control it. Don't let it control you. You are the only one that can do that. If someone, for example, calms you down, you're the one that allows that. You're allowing them to calm you down. You're the one that decides. So the key is to learn to master your mind and body, to gain control over it so that you can pull yourself together and say, okay, you know what, calm down. I'm not going to be able to deal with this when I'm in this state. So I need to breathe, relax, become grounded so that I can deal with the issue at hand. And sometimes not even as bad as your mind makes it out to be. Fear is actually a good thing. It can help you. It keeps you safe. And fear can actually wake you up. It can shake you and be like, whoa, okay, that was scary. And it makes you revisit things, it makes you reinvent yourself, and it makes you see things in a different light. So there's many positives to fear if we have it under control. If fear controls us, that's when the problems begin. So like I said, in order to be grounded, to put your roots into the ground and be stable and secure, we have to overcome our fear. And part of overcoming it is understanding it. Where did your fear come from? Where did it originate? Or ask, how did your fear serve you? What did it help you with? Initially, your fear was maybe supposed to drive you to keep yourself safe from a certain environment, but what then happens is we carry it with us. That fear is no longer applicable, but we carry it with us and it affects us in our daily lives. We have identified with that fear, and that's what shouldn't happen. So learn to see your fear as an ally. Your fear can teach you many things. It can help you in life, and it serves a very important purpose. So learn to embrace fear, to not be afraid of it. You must just learn to master it. Learn to get it under control and ground yourself in order to deal with it. I hope that this video helps you to understand fear and anxiety a little bit better. Just remember, this is just an overview. There's a lot more sides to it and a lot more information, but this is just a short video to help you understand it better. Have a great week.